What's up guys? Matt, Legacy 4x4. We're gonna go through, talk about what's wrong with the 39. I'm gonna take you guys for a test drive and we're gonna talk about the future of the 1939 and where it stands with its life. So let's go ahead and get through it. I'm sweating already. It's gonna be a nice hot video, nice hot day here in Georgia, but let's go explore the 1939 Chevy sedan. Okay, to start naming some things, let's just do a quick walk around and figure out some of the sketchy parts of this rig. The front radiator with that tombstone, nothing too wrong with that. Have an aftermarket transcooler on it instead of using the radiator transcooler. Only reason I'm running the aftermarket transcooler is because I wanted to run AN lines to make it easier, and most of those aftermarket transcooler run AN lines. This header tube definitely needs to be bashed since it's running into the head of the shock body. You know, the wiring in general is a little bit sketchy, but it works. You know, the issue is everything's outside all the time, so it undergoes a lot more wear and tear than it would in a enclosed system, but you know, as long as it keeps working, should be able to keep going. This is the waterproofing for the carb. It is definitely grade A, mechanically engineered. These gauges are cheap eBay gauges, and only about half of them work reliably. The steering is incredibly sketchy, but we'll get to that when we get to the other side. But at least there's a fire extinguisher. Fuel cell is 100% just ratchet strapped in with some rubber stoppers on the feet. You know, might not be the best way to do it, but definitely works for a temporary fix. Again, one of the issues with it being outside and have everything exposed, the bed of this 39 is falling apart already, and it's only been about a year and a half. The rear suspension could definitely use some work for streetability. It is definitely very squirrely and very sketchy on the road with these radius arms. You know, surprise, surprise, parallel radius arms, coilovers, and a panhard bar for rear suspension isn't the most ideal. But it does locate the axle and do its job. It's just a little bit sketchy. I think the funniest part of the suspension is that these King coilovers are more expensive than the coilovers I run on the red Dodge, so that's always fun. Is that a loose wire up there? Yep, probably is. And yep, just hanging brake lines. That's how it works. That's how we get it done. At least that plasma cut emblem looks pretty cool. And also that wicked exhaust is extremely loud. You'll hear that on the drive around test. Those custom headers feed right into that 3-inch pipe with some Flowmaster Super 40s that really don't help at all quieting this thing down. It does give it a nice tune at least. Oh yeah, have I mentioned the alternator works about half the time? Okay, now let's talk about my favorite part of this ridiculously sketchy contraption is this steering setup. Steering column is just a piece of DOM with the steering sleeve. It just slid inside of it with some small plastic bushings, but that doesn't really help. Double U-joints go all the way to this 50-year-old steering box from a 1976 CJ5. This steering box is on the way out the door, and it definitely shakes around way too much while you're just driving in a straight line. Although that could also be this custom high steer arm on one knuckle, as well as the rest of the steering setup on the front axle. Also, this truck is definitely too heavy for these 1.5-inch stock CJ5 leaf springs, but they haven't broken yet, so that's what's getting ran. And so you may have heard all those critiques and all those small little issues with the 39. And, you know, I will say, you know, it runs and drives. It's definitely able to drive down the street. It's just a little sketchy and a little squirrely. So yeah, I'll take you guys for a ride, try and show you what I'm talking about and some of the dilemmas it has, and then we can talk about how we're gonna fix those. And let me just put out there that this thing has not ran since I did that transmission swap that first weekend, and it's been about 30 days, so it'll be a ultra cold start for it. about all we got. Battery's not looking like it's charging, alternator isn't working, so we're calling it. Alright, so I don't think I'm giving as much credit as credit is due to the 1939 Chevy sedan. You know, the body's almost 100 years old, and the parts underneath the body are probably all close to 50 years old, so not having it meshed together very well, having it be a little squirrely, should probably have been expected since the start. I mean, the frame and the drivetrain came from a cheap rock crawler I traded another truck for like 5 years ago, so... And that rock crawler wasn't very good, so that should have been an indication on the future of that frame and drivetrain combination, but alas, here we are, we're in a different world now. You know, the 1939 looks really menacing, and it looks really cool, and it does have the ability to drive around the block. It's just the sketchy factor's a little too high to daily drive and cruise with. So for the time being, it's going to get put on the back burner until I complete my move, and I complete my transition, and I moved on to a different part where I can really focus on the 1939 again and fix the issues at hand. Fixing the issues at hand is going to involve a few things. First thing is going to be a dedicated manual steering box. The current power steering system is on the way out the door, does not work very well, and all it's doing is overcomplicating a really simple process, which is to turn those tires left and right. So I'm going to delete all of it and just do a manual steering box. So eventually I'm going to have to go through that whole suspension and try and fix all the issues I can and make it a little more streetable, a little more dailyable. That way I can actually cruise with it, right? I mean, that's the whole goal, is to make it into a cruiser at this point. And the last major thing we're going to do to it is going to be fixing the ergonomics of that truck car thing. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. Like, I'm not small. I gotta fit in places, and when I don't fit, it's not very comfortable for me. And right now, I don't fit in the 1939 too well. I'm a clown car in that little tiny steering wheel. My feet are all jammed up, so I gotta change up things around and fix it around. Don't know how I'm gonna do it yet, but eventually that's gonna have to get done as well. But at the end of the day, the 1939, it really does look cool. It sounds amazing. And, you know, eventually it'll be a cruiser. Just right now, it's on the mid to low level of the priority list. As a side note, here is next week's video. I got a steal on a 1998 Yamaha Timberwolf. Not a big ATV guy myself, but I have a feeling I'm gonna be after I picked up this ATV for basically free and did a lot of refurbishing to it. It definitely didn't look like this when I bought it, I'll tell you that much. So yeah, if you like ATVs, you know, next week we got an ATV video. And I'll probably take this with me every time I go off-roading. Just, you know, once the red truck breaks down, I'll have an ATV to play around with. You know, it's just gonna put it in the flatbed anyway. So yeah, guys, that's it for this time. I will catch you guys next time. Yeah, the ATV is gonna be pretty fun with me.